fellow travelers. Welcome to the 54th level of the RPG Cave. I'm one of your hosts, the level 99 human archmage, Ryan Turford, and I'm joined, as always, by the level 99 elf medic, Mr. Garret Bland. Garret, how are you doing this lovely, lovely Monday evening, good sir?
I'm doing good. I'm a little tired today. I don't know. I just woke up and I'm like, it's
Just
Monday.
woke up?
Great.
It's like 9 o'clock at night for you.
No, I mean, like, I woke up this morning.
Okay.
This day is gonna be just a little tiring for me, but I'm doing good. Ryan, How about you?
I'm doing okay. I mean, I'm a little bit hyped because tomorrow, very early in the morning from the night we're recording this, the Nintendo Direct Partner Direct is happening, which, you know what that means, Garret? Just tons of RPGs, I'm imagining. That's what I'm expecting.
It's just gonna be Persona. It's gonna be that's what I 100% expect out of this partner direct. It's 100% Persona, and that's it.
Yeah, even though we've already had one other thing leak already that I know you and I are both excited about that we won't mention here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And besides that, I imagine Sea of Stars will probably be there. At least I'm hoping we see that game at some point. Maybe. I mean, it was at the last year's Nintendo Direct during the summer, so maybe. But I'm expected to hear some cool stuff. Of course, everyone who's listening to this on podcast feeds already knows the answer to this question because they're listening to the show a little bit later than the live stream. But I'm excited. We're getting it bright and early tomorrow to actually live stream it. So if you're watching the live stream right now and you want to come back and, watch the Nintendo Direct with some friends, myself, Sean Capri, and Console Kato, then get up bright and early with us at 9 a.m. tomorrow to watch
in 10
the Nintendo
hours.
Direct. Yeah. It'll be fine.
Or no, wait. I'm doing the math. Yeah, 10 hours.
10 hours. That's some fast math right there, Garret. But this is the RPG Cave, of course, where we talk about RPGs all the time. So let's clear the dungeon of some pesky mobs. So before we get into the show, folks at home, if you want to support us, there's a number of awesome ways to do that. Number one, if you're watching the live stream right meow on youtube.com/carpoolgaming, don't forget hit that like button. Subscribe to us if you haven't subscribed already. And of course, ding, ding, ding. Ring that bell to be notified whenever we put up new videos or whenever we go live with a live stream like this one. Also, if you want early access to this and all of our shows on the audio feeds, head over to patreon.com/carpoolgaming. Throw a little tip in the old tip jar and out comes content, including a new episode of the Gimme Capri podcast, which Sean and I recorded, on Friday. We also have a new episode of the Geek Outs coming soon, the Gridlock. We actually have lots of exclusive content on the Patreon, so check us out there. If you haven't had it, if you don't get enough Carpool Gaming as it is on the main feeds, there's always more of us on the Patreon.
You get quite a bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
Also, speaking of audio feeds, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, or whatever podcast service you're listening to us on, don't forget to rate us on there as well, or hit the subscribe button. Especially if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, all that stuff helps the show get discovered. And last but not least, if you want an RPG Cave shirt, or if you want another Carpool Gaming branded shirt, head over to our merch store. The link is in the description of this video. And last thing I gotta throw in the docket, this is kind of housekeeping, but kind of not, Garret, before we move into reading for the secret text, because I have to address something. Some sacrilegious comments by a certain person on this panel over on this show might have heard of called the Nintendo Shack, a PSVG podcast.
Oh, wait, what happened?
So what happened someone there? Between the two of us, Garret, may have mentioned the phrase that Sonic's bad and they don't like Sonic. And I just have to address that here because, Garret, what's wrong with you? Sonic's great. Sonic's always been good.
Wait, hold on. This is an RPG podcast.
There is a Sonic RPG, Sonic and the Dark Brotherhood, made by BioWare on the Nintendo DS.
Let me tell you, Ryan, Sonic, I don't understand why it's in the gaming space in general, and that's just me. Okay, I actually got introduced to it during Sonic Heroes. And I was like, well, this is a blue hedgehog that just runs fast, and it goes crazy, and I'm about to have a seizure. Okay, it pauses, stops, and rings pop out of his butt. That's just how it goes. And I don't know, I don't understand.
But he showed off the power of the blast processing for the Genesis, Garret. That was
the blast 3D processing. I'm sure it had a lot of blast fastness going on. Yeah, you know what? Ryan, it makes sense, back in the 90s that Sonic was, really ahead of its time. Wanted to be fast. It was faster than Mario. It looked cool. back in the day, and then now it's just like it wants to give me a headache every time I see it. And that's just me. The pacing of a Sonic game is just out of my league. And I understand
it's
why
totally
people
understandable.
grow up with
It was only fresh on my mind, Garrett, because I was playing Sonic Origins this week and got the 1,000 gamer score in, and I played, Sonic like all week, and I was like, oh yeah, I don't understand why Garrett doesn't like Sonic, but I'm glad we heard you out a little bit. But maybe we do an episode down the road where we both play Sonic Brotherhood for the game for the Nintendo DS, and we can talk about it because that's technically an RPG made by BioWare of all things. So there you go. But anyways, without further ado, it's time to read from the sacred texts because it is time to talk about a subject that was actually suggested by our community. So if you remember, we ran a forum about a month ago, basically like a survey that you can fill out and let us know what topics you wanted us to cover. But also, we were looking for guest hosts, which, by the way, I forgot to mention as well. Garrett, this is your last show for the next 2 weeks because you're taking a little bit of vacation. But we're going to actually have some guests fill in. And they will be here over the next 2 weeks. And we also pulled them from the same survey as well. So if you filled out the survey, then you might be seeing some of those people on the show next week. But also, we had lots of people post suggestions. And today's episode is inspired by you, the fans of the RPG Cave, who actually came up with this topic, which I think is actually a pretty good topic. Now, the suggestion that we got, Garrett, was about talking about specific classes or specific types of characters, and one of the ones that we got was favorite healers, and we both talked about it, and we were like, there's a lot of healers in RPGs, but we kind of wanted to expand on that a little bit and kind of bring the topic, make the topic a little bit broader, make it a little bit bigger. So we expanded that to best support characters. So basically how we would define a support character is a member of your RPG party that is there to support the other party members, but isn't really doing the main combat themselves. Or if they initiate in combat, that's not really their focus, essentially. So that we each kind of compiled our own list of some of our favorites from our RPGs that we played. We also pulled the community as well. So thank you to everyone who suggested their favorite support characters as well. And we're going to just chalk it out and have a really fun episode, I think, talking about some stuff that we usually don't talk about on shows like that. And I want to give the healers a little bit of love, especially as someone who plays a support class in like every MMO that I play. I have a soft spot for the healers or the support players in their party. Playing that position full time, I totally get the hard work that goes into that. So Garrett, since I've talked a lot, I'm gonna let you take the floor first. Tell me what's your first person you wanted to highlight tonight.
Yeah, sure. So, going through this, it was actually quite a challenge for me. I don't particularly care for other characters when I play a role-playing game. That's why I really like Skyrim or Witcher, something along the lines of that. If I don't have a party in a turn-based game and I need them because of that, essentially, I like to be on my own. I like to be alone throughout, like, interacting with the world. I like to make my own decisions. And that's actually one of the downfalls of why I didn't care for, like, let's say, a Fallout 4's companion system, because they would butt in and be like, oh my gosh, why are you doing this? And I'm like, bro, I'm just doing my own thing. So, but anyways, I have a short list of characters that really stuck with me, support characters. And actually, the first thing that's stuck on my mind is Xenoblade Chronicles, because that series, I'm going through the second one right now. It's like really, really good. It's like sticking to my head a lot. I want to, shout out Xenoblade Chronicles too, because there's a support character in there is probably one of my recent favorites, recent highlights, and that's Nia. She is from the Garmot province. If you look her up, she is a very essential character throughout the story. She is very pivotal. And she does most of my healing in the party. I cannot exclude that character out of my party, because every time I go into battles in Xenoblade Chronicles, she is right there with her main blade, and she is saving my butt just every time. And I think Xenoblade Chronicles is one of those games that you really need a healer. It's very hard to get through that game, and if you don't have a healer on your party, you're not going to have a good time at all. Very similar to MMOs in that sense. But yeah, Nia, she is super great. I won't get into spoiler territory as much, but she does get a lot more powerful, which is great. And yeah, she's in her writing's fantastic. She is sassy, bossy, independent, and she has her own backstory that they explain really well throughout that character development. So yeah, Nia is my first go-to support character that's like really in my mind right now as being like one of the greatest in RPGs.
I actually, again, I'm not super far in Xenoblade Chronicles 2. You know, I didn't play all the way through it. I got to chapter 4 and just kind of put it down because, you know, I couldn't go any farther with that game. But I remember her, you know, standing out as one of the characters that I really enjoyed having in my party. But also, to your point, Garrett, about her kind of being essential to your party's makeup. Like, she was just like a very like pivotal party member where it's like, I can imagine like in the later battles, like you probably wouldn't want to replace her with anyone else. Although I imagine I can, and again, I don't know for sure if you get more party members that are support characters. Like, do you get more support characters than just her, like other options for support besides Nia, or is she really the only one?
Well, she is like the essential healer. The other two characters that I've gotten over course of the game, they're really more damage focused, but it really depends on the blade too, because the blade system, if you guys don't know, it's like the Pokemon for them. It's like their side companion. It's their one companion that kind of helps them out. You can adjust the classes of those blades to your characters, so you can make another character a healer if you want. It's just Nia has such a great default blade. And you don't want to like, and you progress with it too. So she gets more powerful. She heals you a lot better. And it's just like, okay, I think I'm going to keep you in my party because I can just last much longer in these battles. So yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, because I'm glad that there are some options there, just in case maybe you want to rely on you know, items and stuff like that. Because I noticed while also doing this separate exercise, Garrett, that a lot of RPGs, like especially older ones, will have like one person kind of pigeonholed as the support character, and the only option if you want, you know, a healer or, you know, someone that busts your party members in older games. So I'm glad that at least, you know, most modern RPGs have gotten away from that a little bit and give you kind of a variety of options as well. Like another one that comes to mind, and maybe we'll talk about this one a little bit later, is something like Persona 5 does that as well. Where you don't really have just one person that's the support person, but there are certain characters that support in their own ways better than others. So, yeah, nice.
For sure, man.
Well, as for me, I'm going to bring up one of the two people from the thumbnails and of this video, and I'm going to bring up the other one a little bit later, so spoiler alert. But this one, when we were first, you know, presented this topic in mind, the first name that came to mind for me personally is Aerith from Final Fantasy VII. She is one of, you know, the two potential love interests, I guess 3 if you count Barrett technically. But Aerith, you know, she's the flower girl from the slums, but she's kind of like your party's main healer. Now, the interesting about Final Fantasy VII is there aren't really any defined classes in Final Fantasy VII. We've talked about this a little bit on the show before, but in Final Fantasy VII, with each character, you basically have the materia system, which allows you to socket different, you know, orbs containing spells into, you know, certain pieces of gear like your sword or your accessory that your character is wearing, and those basically give you your character's abilities, and they alter your character's stats in one way or another. But Aerith in particular is really, really bad at attacking, even if you give her all the attacking stuff, because she is designed to be the party's support character. She's designed to basically be loaded up with all the cure spells, all the antidote spells, all of the, you know, buffing, like the time magic spells like haste or regen, things like that. Like, she's basically created as that character. And then in Final Fantasy VII Remake, they really, you know, leaned into that and made it so that she really can't attack at all, or just very, very poorly, or she attacks even worse in Remake, and then she is more of the healing supportive character. Especially like there's the one boss fight against the Hell House, which is the giant sentient house that tries to attack you in that game, and it's just her and Cloud. So Cloud basically does all the attacking, and then whenever you need to heal or if you want to buff Cloud a little bit, then you switch to Aerith, and then you basically go back to Cloud and kind of keep wailing on this house that's trying to murder you. So I actually really like Aerith's character as well. I think she's well written, especially in the remake. I love kind of her chirps and kind of quirkiness to her character and the way that she's written. Of course, though, she's not the love interest that I usually like to go with. As far as when you pick your love interest in the game, I usually side on the side of Tifa, because I do think that she's a little bit better of a romantic interest, especially when you consider Cloud's history as a character. It just makes more sense. But I do think that Aerith is a great character and a great addition to your party, and throughout her time in the party in Final Fantasy VII, you'll be using her most of the time. So I think she's an essential part of any good Final Fantasy VII party, and I think she's just a great character overall. One of the most memorable RPG characters of pretty much any JRPG franchise out there. So Aerith from Final Fantasy VII's got to be number one for me, or the first one that I bring up here.
Nice. Now I played a little bit of Final Fantasy VII Classic. I remember Aerith being in my party, and I totally agree with you. She is just the support character, and she has, well, at least from my experience, from my recollection of the first part of Final Fantasy VII, she is very just like mysterious. You just pop in there, it's like, oh, there's this new character, and I'm like, who's this girl? And then like, I guess you slowly peel back like who she is and what's her backstory throughout as you play the game. And that's the way to go, man, with these support characters, is like have a development going on and have some good writing in there. So I need to get back to Final Fantasy VII, man.
That you brought up a good point.
I think that's
Garret,
on my short list.
because I think like that's one of the things I really appreciate about that game, is that every character in your party has the tinge of mysteriousness to them. Some of them are a little less mysterious than others, but they all have they all have their own character development arcs with their own specific quests that are associated with them that really flesh out each of the party members' stories, which I think is just one of the reasons why people really, look back on that game so fondly, is because they're really able to connect with these characters and see the character growth from, like, all the characters are very different at the end of the game than they were at the start, which you can't say about every RPG. But
For sure.
you go. Moving on, Garret. What's your next one?
My next one is another like very overpowered healer / support character, which I really enjoyed as I played throughout this game in Fire Emblem Three Houses. So for me, I played through this. It took me about 95 to 100 hours to beat it, because I play on hard and I play on classic mode, and so I was just spending hours and hours just going through these battles and sequences, and of course I would rewind like so many different times. But I did choose the Black Eagles, and my favorite support character out of all of them is Linhardt. Linhardt is the kind of the lazy boy. He has green hair, longish hair with a ponytail in the back. He is just hilarious every time you get to like speak with him ever in his interactions with the party, because he doesn't want to even try at all. He is so lazy, so willfully ignorant about everything. And it's just interesting to see a character like this, not so motivated, but he's in the game and going through this story. Of course, he probably has some development here and there with relationships as you go throughout the game, but for the most part, his personality is not changed at all. It's very in the scope of, I'm just gonna do my own thing. I'm gonna take a nap for the whole weekend. But he is a great healer. He is an excellent healer in my party. I had at least like 2 or 3 other sub healers in my party, but he was my main one. He was able to heal basically like the entire, like covers the entire board. Like I got to that point where he had very far range in healing, and that was very essential, especially in classic mode of Fire Emblem to have a healer in your party like that. And he teleported my units around. It was just all around a great support character, especially when a game like Fire Emblem, you need character placement correctly. He does it. He does the job. So yeah, that's my pick number 2 is Linhardt from.
I love how you describe his character arc too, where essentially he's like really lazy, and then like after the time skip, he's just like slightly less lazy, but still wants to just go take a nap all the time. I love that is kind of his thing. But also too is it's also like when I was looking back and trying to look back on like Fire Emblem characters, because there are so many characters that I love from Fire Emblem, but
there's so many.
Most of them aren't the healers or support characters, because I always find they kind of like fade into obscurity a little bit, especially because you get so many of them, that there wasn't one to me that really stood out. So I'm glad that you brought one to the table, Garrett, and actually were able to talk about Linhardt a little bit, because now that we're talking about it, I'm like, oh yeah, I do remember that little scamp, because I played through the Black Eagles campaign twice, because I love the Black Eagles. I think they're the best.
Yes.
And the only real choice. Let's just be clear about the three houses, that they're the best.
Definitive choice. Yes.
Of course. But so yeah, I'm glad that you brought him up, because I think that's actually a great choice, Garrett. But also too, I just couldn't find a good one. But I'm gonna bring in the Muffin Mon, aka Kevin Ainsworth, from the Discord, because he actually not only brought up a Fire Emblem choice, but he also had something to say in relation to my last choice as well. So he says, since I'm in a Fire Emblem mood, I have to shout out the support and the best golden deer, Marianne. Such a sweet character with a much deeper, darker, complex backstory. And as I usually do, a shout out for a Tales character, and I'm going to give that shout out to Mint from Tales of Fantasia, the quintessential healer. She literally can't do any damage, but is always there to heal the party, provide debuffs, or even freeze time to support the team. Awesome design, awesome character. So there we go. We got some golden deer representation in here. Does anyone really like the golden deers, Garrett? I mean, I guess they're better than the blue lions. I think they're better than blue lions, at least. You got to give them that.
I guess so. I actually recruited Marianne in my party, actually.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, but I didn't use her as... I was really trying to make her more of a Pegasus knight, but it didn't really work out that well. But yeah, she's very mysterious as well. I'm sure she's much better as a support character than what I was trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, I just turned her into a sorceress and shot fireballs at people instead with her.
Oh yeah,
yeah. There's that. There is that available to her, and then Mint. I haven't really played a lot of Tales of Fantasia. I haven't really played. That's one of the Tales games I haven't played all the way through, because we don't have really a good North American version of that game. But from what I do remember, Mint is exactly as Kevin basically describes, where she's a character that can't really attack, and she's really just like the core kind of healer for the party, essentially. So that's interesting. But I'm great insights, Kevin. Thanks for letting us know. Speaking,
yes, thank you.
And then moving on to me, in relation to Kevin's question, my next one is a Tales character. It's also from the thumbnail, because again, I'm getting these two out of the way because they've already been spoiled. So I just want to start with these two. And this is the other one that I just kind of thought of right away, because she was super memorable, because she's one of kind of the two protagonists from the game, but she's a support character, which you don't really see that often for a main character of the story. A lot of times, the support character is, kind of more in the background or isn't as focal to the story. But Estelle from Tales of Vesperia is actually very key to the story, because the story kind of revolves around her in a big way. But again, as a support character, she attacks with a scepter and a shield. So she's almost like a tanky character, but all of her spells are healing spells. And she's like the best healer by far in the Hera game, but she also has abilities and spells that buff your other party members and give you increased damage, and give you all the extra abilities that you would want. So she's kind of very key to any good party in Tales of Vesperia. You could also go a route where you don't use her, but then you don't really you go no support characters and you kind of rely on items a little bit, which is a strategy I talked about a little bit earlier when we were talking about Nia with Xenoblade. So that you do have that option available to you, but I think your party just is sorely lacking if you don't have Estelle in there. Plus, again, she's so sweet and adorable. She's very naive about the outside world because she basically has lived in a castle all her life because she's a princess. But when she leaves the castle, she goes through a ton of character growth. And again, like the main last half of the scenario really revolves around her character. So she's very integral to the plot of the game, in addition to just being a great support character in your party. So I think that Estelle, really memorable character, one of the best characters, I think, from Tales of Vesperia, which already has a great cast of characters to begin with. And I think that she's great. And she's also just really funny in some of the skits that they have as well, because with all the Tales games, they have skits in between all the different battles that are optional that you can watch. And she has a bunch of great, chirps and quips with the rest of the party. So I really enjoy her character as well. So there you go. Estelle from Tales of Vesperia.
Nice. The Tales series, I've been, dabbled with it quite often. Most recently, I played a good chunk of Tales of Hearts. They do a good job, I think, with customizing your characters to whatever you really want to do, especially in Tales of Hearts, where it's like, it was very easy for me to like go to support or attack or defense, and I definitely designated some characters as a support class. And so I definitely need to check Tales of Vesperia out because I have not tried that one out. I think I have that on Switch.
It is on Switch. It's the definitive edition. It also was in Game Pass for a while. I don't know if it's still there as well, but it was.
Oh, okay.
So, but yeah, one of the better Tales games. It was an Xbox 360 exclusive at one point, which is just weird to think about. But Garrett, what's your next one?
All right, so my next one on my list is actually, even though I'm a lonesome person, I definitely have one companion in Skyrim that is mostly a support character, can attack if they want to, but the main reason why I had this character is because of support, and that is Serana, and she is a vampire. I guess you could say it's a princess of some kind because she is the daughter of the Lord Vampire in the Dawnguard DLC. And the main reason why I chose her as a companion is because I got to the point in that game where I chose the vampire line but killed the Lord Vampire. So I'm like kind of the Lord Vampire, I guess, in that game. And she has the blood arrows, and so she gives you her blood, and you kind of like douse it with your arrows, and you can shoot it at the sun. You can turn it dark at any time. And I'm like, all right, this is it. This is my favorite part of Skyrim. Every time I just need to make the whole thing go dark, and it turns into like a blood moon in a sense. Nice. It's super cool. It was great animation at the time. I was so surprised that they pulled it off. With that, I get amazing buffs because I was a vampire. And when I turn into my beast kind of like form or whatever of the vampire, it was much, much more powerful if it's like in dark or with that blood moon. So, and then Serana, she was like more of an anti-hero. Like she wasn't like straight up villain. I want to kill everyone. It's like, I just, I think the way my dad is running is not good at all. So yeah, you can go ahead and, toss him away, and we'll figure out how to run this this kind of gang of vampires, and how to control basically all of Skyrim. And I'm like, all right, this sounds like my type of storyline. So I'm gonna go for it. But yeah, that's one of my favorite side companions and support characters in Skyrim.
Garrett Bland, the Vampire Lord. That's just who you are. That's who you identify as.
Pretty much.
Which is hilarious because we literally took the exact opposite approach in Dawnguard, where I just turned into a werewolf and murdered all of them. So.
Oh wow.
I never had that interaction with
right.
him, which is interesting because I played the other side of the story where I played on the side of the Dawnguard, because we were going to murder all the vampires because, we're werewolves, because that's what we do.
Yeah.
And I mean, to be fair, Garrett, when you compare werewolves and vampires, there's no comparison. Werewolves are way better. That's just how this works.
I don't know about that. I was a vampire, and I was pretty... so the original werewolf and vampire, I would agree that the werewolf was much better. But I think with the Dawnguard DLC, I was surprised how powerful and how cool it was to be a vampire lord. And I didn't have any like the negative things on me either, just because of how far I went down that tree.
Yeah, they definitely made it a much better experience versus just being a normal vampire in any of the Elder Scrolls games, because it always felt like it was just, you had so many negatives that it was never worth it. Whereas when they had that expansion come out, it felt like it was a much better experience. Playing the class fantasy. Whereas werewolf being that a werewolf in that or Morrowind has always been amazing. It's been so overpowered. So, it's just an interesting route to go. But anyways, moving on. Let's get to my next choice. And my next choice, I've talked about on previous shows, so I don't know how much I'll get too into it. But it's from Shining Force 2, a game that Garrett will eventually play one day. I will make sure he plays them one day. I mean, I'm just adding more games to your list, Garrett, every time we do this show. But my character of choice from Shining Force 2, and there's a lot of great options for support characters in that game, kind of like Fire Emblem in the same way, but the one that stands out for similar reasons to Estelle that I talked about is Sarah. She's one of the 3 characters that you actually start with. She starts as a priest, but then the way Shining Force works as a series is whenever a character reaches level 20, they can be promoted, and then they change classes, and depending on whether or not you find a certain optional item, they can go one route or the other. So Sarah is very key to your party from the very beginning of the game. She's kind of one of the main character's best friends. Like her and Chester, the centaur, are kind of the main character's 2 best friends growing up. And she's just a very sarcastic character, which, I'm totally behind because I'm also very sarcastic. But she's also a very powerful support character. And she has a lot of healing spells, a lot of buffing spells, a lot of protection spells. And depending on which, promotion you go down with her, she can go one of 2 ways. She can go down the Vicar class route, which is just like a more like upgraded priest, essentially, where you got a ton of really powerful healing spells that can heal across the battlefield or do all kinds of crazy stuff. Or you can go down the Master Monk route with her. So she becomes one of the game's most powerful attackers, in addition to also having a bunch of support spells that she learned as being a priest. So she becomes kind of a jack of all trades in a lot of ways, and is like very crucial to any party, and basically deciding, okay, which one of my priests am I going to make master monks, and which one of my priests are going to become vicars, is just a very important choice that happens in that game. But again, just like I talked about with Estelle, she's very central to the plot, but not, as essential as someone like Estelle was from my previous example. But she's a big part of that story. So that's one of the reasons why I had to include Sarah here. She's also, like, again, the very first support character I've had in any RPG I ever played, because Shining Force 2 is my very first RPG. So that I learned very quickly, how to take advantage of having support characters in your party. And she starts off just not being able to attack at all. Like she starts off kind of like the mint character that Kevin described from Tales of Fantasia, but then she can totally become your most powerful attacker if you want her to be. So I love the flexibility with that cool support character.
Nice. I will eventually play Shining Force.
Yeah.
I played a little bit of Shining Force 1.
I know. I know. You'll have to get back to that at some point. I know you've got a ton of games on your plate, but one of these days, Garrett. Yeah, I think Camelot did a really good job of customizing your characters in the Shining Force games, and Sarah, there's no clearer example than Sarah, who I think you could take one of 2 very different ways, and depending on kind of the needs of your party and depending on what you as the player kind of values the most. So there you go. And cool. Moving on, before we get to you, Garrett, I want to bring in another person from the community, Blaze Knight, on the Discordia, who says, gotta give a shout out to Narsha from Shining Force Resurrection of the Dark Dragon for Game Boy Advance, and Rayson from Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. The former was a character added to the Game Boy Advance remake that is all about support. She has access to an attack spell, which boosts your allies' attacks, full parties heals in aura, and increased movement speeds with the step spell, while the latter is a Herod who is in beast form, can grant an additional turn up to 4 party members, and he flies for easy placement in battle. So I never played Path of Radiance. Cool. That's the very expensive GameCube game that I've just never actually owned or played, unfortunately. But it's one that I would love to play eventually, if I could ever find it for, a decent price at some point. And then Narsha is actually a really interesting choice because for the thing that Blaze Knight brings up, where, she's a character exclusive to the remake of the original Shining Force, which was on Game Boy Advance.
That is so interesting.
But she really is very powerful. Like, she's almost like too powerful in a lot of ways too, what, Blaze Knight was talking about a little bit. But I'm glad we included her, because that's a deep cut right there. I was not expecting her asking for context. I was not expecting Narsha from Resurrection of Dark Dragon. But Garrett, moving on. What is your next choice?
Yes. All right, bud. I had to go back to the Xenoblade well because they do such a good job at their support characters and making a story arc out of them. So I'm going to shout out Melia from Xenoblade Chronicles 1. I think I've talked at length about her in previous episodes and probably in Nintendo Shack as well. But she was the main healer, and she's also a sorceress, so she can do some damage if she wants. But she was the main support character in my party, and she has a great arc at the end of the game about her struggle in like her family lineage and her royalty. So she is part of this race called, I think it's called the NTA. I don't quote me on that. But she is a half-breed, though, so she has a lot of struggle and conflict within her family lineage and also with all the other royal members inside the nation or the country. And they tried to mainly resolve that through the standalone DLC Xenoblade Chronicles Future Connected. And she is an essential party member throughout the game. I never removed her from the game. There was that, and then I think I saw another person mention Sharla, which is a super cool character from Xenoblade as well. But I think Amelia was a little bit more effective at healing, and she was also good at attacking. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to add this character in and get Charlotte out. But yeah, I really like the way Xenoblade Chronicles does their support characters, because they do a pretty good job of just like adding them in, making them essential, and then also giving a good backstory behind all of them. But yeah, I had to shout out Amelia. And maybe she'll be in future games.
Maybe.
We'll see.
Maybe. Well,
maybe.
Bring in Nagachaka at Nagachaka on Twitter, who says, huge shout out to Sharla from Xenoblade Chronicles, who literally shoots her party members with healing rounds to restore health. But my personal favorite is definitely Aerith from Final Fantasy VII Remake. Using Arcane Ward to cast spells twice is ridiculously overpowered, and yes, Nagachaka, she is ridiculously overpowered when you use, Arcane Ward in Final Fantasy VII Remake. But yes, to your point, you have two like really different options available to you in that game, which seems really interesting and kind of cool. That's a game I just haven't really had a chance to play yet, but I'm glad there's so much love for Xenoblade 1 on this list.
Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah. Pretty soon we'll be back talking about Xenoblade Chronicles again, Garrett. We'll see. Wink, wink.
Can't get enough of it, right?
I can never escape it, apparently. Just like how Garrett can never escape Sonic and the Dark Brotherhood coming to a cinema near you. Or an
Let's
RPG
go.
But next up, I brought up an interesting choice, one that might have some people divided when I say this one. I've got Saz from Final Fantasy XIII as my next character.
Oh, okay.
So Saz, he's got a chocobo that lives in his afro. He's a dad, and he's basically trying to save his son from this terrible fate that's been befallen of him. So he reluctantly joins Lightning's party to try and take down the big bads in Final Fantasy XIII to kind of free his son essentially. And I think he's like a really well developed character with a lot of deep emotions, and I love some of the story beats that befall Saz later in the game. I think he's just a really interesting character, and one you don't really see in JRPGs a lot, where again he's a very relatable father figure, and he's just just a good dad, I think. And not only that, but he's also a great support character in your party. Now Final Fantasy XIII is an interesting game too, because you can change your party formation a ton of different ways, where even though Lightning is way better as an attacker, she can use the different support classes as well, like the Ravager or the Synergist is what they're called in that game. But she's terrible at it. Versus Saz, who's much more geared as, the Synergist kind of character, which the Synergist basically exists to throw different buffs on your party members, such as, haste to increase their attack speed, or, slow down the enemies, or to put barriers up so that you take less damage from a different attack. So he's just an all-around great support character. And I just think his character arc that he goes on is just really awesome. And he's really well written and acted by the character that the person who plays him. And I just really love him as a character. And he's definitely underrated in the pantheon of Final Fantasy characters, just across all the games. And it's one that you wouldn't really expect too, because again, Final Fantasy 13 is not the type of game that has a lot of likable characters, but I think Zaz is kind of stands out from the pack as like one of the more likable characters in that game. Especially too because you've got the other two support characters, which are Hope and Vanille, and they're just okay. Whereas Saz,
just okay.
Saz is just way better. He's way cool for character. So had to include one here. He's also got dual pistols, which is just cool too. So
all right then. That sounds good. I haven't heard much about Final Fantasy 13. I just don't think people really think of that game when they think of Final Fantasy in general. It's like, oh, let's talk about 6, let's talk about 7, let's talk about 9, 10, 11, 12. Oh, no, let's go to 14.
Well, 13 was just really disappointing game for a lot of people because you just, for the most part, the first 20 hours of the game, you're running straight down a hallway. There's not a lot of exploration, whereas other previous Final Fantasy games were kind of built on having, big open spaces to explore, and I think that really disappointed a lot of people. But in retrospective, when I've gone back and played Final Fantasy 13, because it got a big upgrade with Xbox Series X, where they had a bunch of X enhancements on it. It plays in 4K on Xbox. It looks beautiful. It looks like a brand new game. And I actually think that game was really ahead of its time, because nowadays, how many games could I describe to you, Garrett, where they for most of the game you're running in a straight line, or they're very linear until a certain point in the game where then you're able to explore 10 or 15 hours in. Like, how many other games do you know of that are like that nowadays? I think a lot of them kind of fit that mold. So
yeah, pretty much like open area type of game. Let's go through a linear path. All right, let's go back to an open area type of deal. Yeah.
So I think from a game design perspective, it was ahead of its time when it came to that, which is what led to the disappointment with Final Fantasy 13. Whereas now, if you look at it, if you avoided all those comments and you played that game brand new now, I bet you'd actually probably really enjoy that game out there.
Yeah, it probably holds up.
So
yeah. It probably plays really well on Xbox Series X as well. I heard.
Yeah.
It back compat is pretty good.
That's the best. That's the best way to play it, even on PC. Like, it's way better than even the PC version. So that's the way I would recommend to play that game. But Garrett, do you have any more picks? I know we didn't talk about it ahead of time, but did you bring 5? How many you got left?
I think I have like one more that's absolutely support character I want to mention. And probably no one else would understand it unless they're huge Shin Megami Tensei 5 fans or into the game. So I don't know if all of these people would know, but Shin Megami Tensei is all about support. Like, you need the buffs, you need the debuffs, you need the healing like crazy. You need like all the support you can get. And so I'm gonna cheat a little bit, Ryan. It's not like a specific character, because Shin Megami Tensei 5 is just demons and
you're not just about to say all the demons in Shin Megami Tensei 5, are you?
All the freaking just a shout out to all the demons in there. No, there's one specific demon that I actually fused in game. I forgot the name of it. I was trying to look it up, but I just forgot what the name was. But I can describe to you what it looks like, and you probably get a good sense in your head. It is a huge fly. It's literally like the biggest, grossest looking fly you would ever see in your life. I think you can see the hairs just pointing out of its eyes and everything.
Yep.
But just stick with me here, Ryan. This one, I initially had his skill set a little bit of physical attacks and a little bit of support. And like, I was trying to get through the game like that. I got stuck at the final boss. And I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? with my party because I maxed out my levels. I've done everything I can. The only thing I can do is just respec my skills with this game. And so I point to this specific demon. It's like, you're going to be the support demon. Everyone else is going to try to attack or heal or whatever, but you're going to be support. And what I mean by support is not just healing, but also like buffing and debuffing. And so I got to the point where that thing had a passive skill where I had extra turns of permanent buffs on demons throughout the battle. And also every time I used like a certain skill, it could double the physical or magical attack of any other demon and had outrageous MP. And that's how I was able to defeat the final boss of this game, is with this big bugfly demon. Respec him as the most support demon I've ever played in a game. And it really made me think about support and differently than any other role-playing game. Because other role-playing games, as we mentioned, there's a defined set of characters. It's like, these are the characters that are support. And Shin Megami Tensei is like, no, you got to figure that out. And I figured that out with this one demon, and I was able to defeat the final boss because of it. So there you go. Big fly demon thing in Shin Megami Tensei 5. You are #1 MVP support character in my
You may
heart.
be super ugly. You may be a giant ugly fly, but you know what?
Yes.
You're a good support.
You're a great support.
Nice. Again, I don't remember the name either, but I think I recall that demon from Persona. I don't remember what it's called though. But
I forgot what it's called too, but it's just a big ugly fly thing.
Of course. Well, moving on, before I give my final pick, I'm going to bring in our last community suggestion. This comes to us from Jennison Ryleth, which I believe that's a Makode name from Final Fantasy XIV, but it's Nick in brackets, at Jennison VT on Twitter, who says Vivi from Final Fantasy IX is their favorite. So Vivi is, your black mage in your party, which normally is known for casting like big devastating spells. But what was interesting about his character in Final Fantasy IX is that when paired with the character Steiner, who's a knight, Vivi could cast a bunch of elemental sword abilities on Steiner's sword, like a fire sword or an ice sword, depending on what the enemy's elemental weakness is. And then Steiner could go in for a giant attack with it. So they always mesh really well together if you had both of them in the party together. So, and Vivi was kind of a good support with him around, combined with the fact that he was also just one of the most powerful characters in the game, with just raw offensive magic on top of that. Good shout out, Jennison. Also, Vivi in particular, also very integral to the plot. I think he's great, a great character as well. One of the best Final Fantasy characters as well. But
nice.
Moving on to my final character, which is one I think we've talked about on a show before, because I think we were talking about our favorite female characters, and I talked about this character. And this one is Jessica from Lunar the Silver Star, or Lunar Silver Star Story, or Lunar Silver Star Story Complete, or Lunar Silver Star Harmony, depending on which version of Lunar 1 you want to play, on what console you're playing on. She acts as the party's healer after Luna leaves the party early in the game, and she's a cleric. She basically is like a priest at a church, but her dad is Master Mel, who's like this great war hero. He's basically your typical barbarian character, but he's also half human, half cat. And then Jessica's kind of the same way. So she kind of has like a really bad temper associated with her. So even though she's a priest, she's got this really bad temper. She's got these like warrior like sensibilities in her blood. So she's always kind of at odds with those as a character. But also she's just a fantastic support character from all the spells that she has available to her, with, again, a bunch of debuffs, a bunch of enemy debuffs, a bunch of, healing magic. And as well, too, she's also a great attacker on top of that. I think she's like the perfect example of a great support character in a classic JRPG. And I got to give it out to Jessica. Yes, she's not really, as modular as a lot of the characters that I've talked about. But I just love her sass in combination with her ability to be a great party member. So Jessica, very key to your party. If you didn't have Jessica in your party and you, or the times that she leaves the party, it's very, very, very noticeable when she's not there. So she's definitely a key member of the Lunar team. But that's all I'm going to say about that, because again, I talked about her more as a character, kind of in the best, female character episode. So go back and go listen to that episode as well. But there you go. Those are all of our picks. I think we did this subject good, Garrett. Although I will throw in an honorable mention, being the Warrior of Light from Final Fantasy XIV, aka my character from Final Fantasy XIV, Garrett. Clearly the best support character, because I just go around and heal the entire party and keep everyone alive. So clearly I'm the best support character out there, Garrett. But
yeah, I mean, I definitely miss I didn't mention Persona games. I didn't mention Chrono Trigger. There's definitely a lot of great support characters over there. I was really just trying to figure out, okay, which ones were really personal to me, unique to me. It's like, these are the support characters I really enjoyed as I played the game. But yeah, there's just so many. For sure. Especially you, Ryan. I would pick you as my best support character in Final Fantasy XIV.
Well, thank you.
Just letting you know.
I'll promise to. If you die in the party, Garrett, while we're fighting the raid boss, I'll make sure to resurrect you right away. I will use my swift cast and instantly raise you, because instead of using that to throw out another healing spell.
Thank you.
Just to keep you alive. But anyways, those are our picks. So if you're watching on YouTube, we would love to know what some of your picks are. Have we left anyone out? Let us know in the comments below. We would love to hear from you. And otherwise, Garrett, plugs go.
You can follow me on Twitter at @BlandExplosion. You can also find me on the Nintendo Shack, part of the Play Some Video Games Podcast Network, where we're live each and every Thursday night over at twitch.tv/PSVG. And we release on all podcast services, including Spotify, Apple, YouTube, whatever you want to go. And also, before we end the show, Ryan, I just want to mention, have you seen the Fallout 4, Fallout London trailer?
No,
okay,
it's a mod. What that is.
Yeah, so this is a mod that's been in development for years now, as you can tell. It's a Fallout 4 mod created by a small team. And they recently released their official trailer a few days ago. Go check it out. It's super dope. I'm gonna be if they have a price tag, I'm sure I would go for it and play on PC. So yeah, just for you Fallout fans over there, there's people out there trying to make some extra content for you other than BGS.
Nice. Well, also, before we wrap up the show as well, Garrett, if someone's watching tonight or listening tomorrow morning, what are you guys doing for the Nintendo Direct for Shack? Do you guys know if you're going live early or going just live on the normal time this week? What are you guys doing?
We're just going to go live on the normal time Thursday.
Cool.
So, and we'll have impressions. Nice. This is a mini Direct. Me and Rebecca kind of suspect what's going to happen or not happen, what kind of games are going to be there, but I'm interested what's going to be out there. I will be up early though tomorrow to watch it.
Yeah.
I'll be up 5:30 in the morning. Yes, first I will be dragging myself out of the bed, making myself a cup of coffee beforehand.
Although what's interesting about this Direct, Garrett, is that it's not a live stream this time. It's not even a premiere either. It's just the video will just go live at that time, so you just seek through the video. So just beware of Twitter in the morning if you're.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna probably remove that. Yeah. Just go straight. Just watch the video.
But I also wanted to preface that here too, because I think Garrett and we mentioned before that we wanted to save our predictions until after the Direct is out. So when Garrett returns in 2 weeks, we will talk about our predictions that we made, earlier.
Forever ago.
Yeah, forever ago. To see, that Ryan Turford was right this whole time about everything. I
think I was wrong, on most of things.
Actually, I'm pretty sure neither of us have any points right now. So it's anyone's game. It's anyone's game with the Direct tomorrow. But as for me, you can find me on Twitter at Ryan Turford. You can find us on Twitter at Carpool Gaming, on YouTube at youtube.com/Carpool Gaming, and on podcast services around the globe. So for Garrett Bland, I'm Ryan Turford. This has been level 54 of the RPG Cave, and we're out.
Bye-bye.